This situation keeps getting absolutely crazier by the hour, folks, and quite frankly, this entire free agency circus is spiraling completely out of control. We're not just talking about normal off-season rumors and speculation anymore, we're talking about seismic shifts happening in real time. Major insiders dropping bombshells left and right. Leverage games being played at the highest levels. And the Toronto Blue Jays sitting right in the middle of the most chaotic free agent sweepstakes we've seen in years. Not only do we have some absolutely massive updates surrounding Kyle Tucker from one of the most notable and respected reporters in all of baseball as it pertains to the Blue Jays' relentless pursuit, but we also have a bunch of brand new developments surrounding Bo Bichette. And one team has suddenly emerged as the clear favorite to land the star shortstop. And when I tell you how this is all connected, when I reveal how these dominoes are about to fall in rapid succession, your mind is going to be absolutely blown. We're going to break down all the latest updates, dissect what multiple insiders are reporting, analyze the leverage games being played behind the scenes, and most importantly discuss how things keep escalating to insane levels in this wild free agent pursuit that has the Toronto Blue Jays at the absolute center of the baseball universe. There is a ton to cover in this episode, folks, including another move that the Blue Jays are being forced into making in the coming weeks that could have major roster implications. But before we dive headfirst into this madness, if you're part of the percentage of people who aren't subscribed to this channel, what are you even doing? This is the place to be for daily Blue Jays content that you won't find anywhere else. Hit that subscribe button right now, smash the like button, and turn on notifications because when the Kyle Tucker signing breaks, you're going to want to be the first to know. And we're going to be the first channel bringing you that news with all the analysis and reaction you need. Alright, obviously we're all eagerly waiting and, checking our phones every 30 seconds, refreshing Twitter constantly, watching for notifications for the Blue Jays to make a big move here. But we have an absolute ton of new updates to go over, and you're going to want to stay tuned because there's a very notable Bo Bichette development that changes everything about how we view this entire offseason. But I want to start with how things are getting even crazier, and more importantly, how this whole situation is getting a little bit out of hand surrounding the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes. Because yesterday, Ken Rosenthal, and we're talking about Ken Rosenthal, folks, one of the most credible, respected insiders in all of baseball came out and made a statement that should have every Blue Jays fan absolutely losing their minds with excitement. Rosenthal said, and I quote, "I'd say Toronto is the leader for Kyle Tucker right now. Cool. Not in the mix, not among the finalists, not have expressed interest, the leader." This is incredibly encouraging, especially coming from a guy like Ken Rosenthal who does not traffic in hot takes or clickbait speculation. When Rosenthal says something like this, you can take it to the bank. Now, I'm going to show you an abundance of new reports that have dropped over the past 24 hours, and we're going to connect all the dots to understand exactly what's happening here. But we've reached a point in the offseason where, especially regarding Kyle Tucker, things are starting to reach a critical mass. The Bo Bichette market is seeming to pick up a little bit with confirmed teams scheduling meetings, confirmed interest becoming public knowledge. But with Tucker, we keep hearing the same few different reports over the past couple of weeks. Actually, it feels like the past couple of months at this point. It's the same teams, the same speculation, the same analysis over and over in what feels like an endless circle. But here's what's notable at the same time. Tucker is taking this long to make a decision, and no major new teams are really emerging as serious contenders besides one that we'll dive into in just a minute. The fact that this process is dragging out, that Tucker hasn't just signed with the highest bidder already, tells us something important about what's happening in these negotiations. This report from Ken Rosenthal is super notable, and Blue Jays fans, everybody from the players themselves to the front office to ownership, has been making a massive push for Kyle Tucker. But I want to start with another report that dropped recently that not many people are even talking about. And it's absolutely crucial to understanding where this is all heading. We know that Ken Rosenthal recently came out and said that the big move for the Blue Jays, quote, "It would seem to me is Kyle Tucker." And that's of course referring specifically to Toronto as opposed to any other team. As I start to dive into some of the reports surrounding Bo Bichette in just a few minutes, you'll start to understand why Tucker is becoming more and more clear as the Blue Jays' primary target and why Bo is increasingly looking like he's headed elsewhere. But first, I want to highlight a new report that dropped from Mark Feinsand that absolutely nobody is talking about. And it's driving me crazy because this is hugely significant information. According to Feinsighting 2, industry sources and we're talking about people inside baseball operations who know what's actually happening behind closed doors. Those sources still tabbed the Blue Jays as Tucker's likely destination even after they signed Kazuma Okamoto to that 4-year, $70 million deal. Here's the quote that should get every Blue Jays fan fired up. Once they gave Vladdy the extension, they sent a message that they were going all-in to win. Signing Dylan Cease was big, but adding Tucker would obviously finish off a pretty impressive 12 months for them. Think about what that statement means. Industry insiders are looking at the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extension as the foundation, the Dylan Cease signing as the next major step, and Kyle Tucker as the cherry on top that completes this championship roster. That's not speculation from fans or wishful thinking from bloggers. That's people inside the industry analyzing the Blue Jays moves and concluding that Tucker to Toronto makes the most sense. And no matter which reporter you talk to, whether it's Robert Murray from just a few days ago, who I covered extensively on this channel, talking about how Tucker actually wants to play for the Blue Jays, whether it's the latest from Ken Rosenthal confirming Toronto as the leader, whether it's Feinsand's industry sources saying the same thing, these types of reporters don't make this stuff up. This isn't leverage. This isn't agents planting stories. This is real, legitimate interest from both sides. Now, could there be a chance that Tucker signs elsewhere and people say the Blue Jays were used as leverage? Sure, technically that's possible. But at this point, with this many independent sources all saying similar things, with Ken Rosenthal explicitly calling Toronto the leader, we're looking at genuine mutual interest between Tucker and the Blue Jays. This is real, folks, and it's getting closer to happening with each passing day. Obviously, every Blue Jays fan is doing their part, commenting under every Kyle Tucker Instagram post, flooding his Twitter mentions with blue heart emojis, trying to recruit him to Toronto through sheer force of social media. Well, the Blue Jays organization is clearly doing their own part, with Ross Atkins recently being asked about Tucker and giving answers that suggest serious ongoing discussions. And now Ken Rosenthal has doubled down by calling Toronto the leader. But it is important to note that there are other teams involved in this pursuit. Because late last night, Jon Heyman came out with a report saying that the New York Mets are very much in the mix for Kyle Tucker, but still face stiff competition. And this is where things have gotten a little bit crazier, because people are now starting to wonder if the Mets might actually be the favorites despite what Rosenthal is reporting. Let's not forget that Ben Nicholson-Smith over the past couple of weeks, especially over the past week, has been saying that the Mets have suddenly emerged as maybe even a likelier destination than the Blue Jays for Tucker long-term. Though to be fair, he's changed his reporting a little bit recently. Suggests the situation is fluid and things are evolving quickly. It does make sense that Tucker, if he wants to play in the United States, or if he specifically wants to go to a National League team, might be intrigued by the New York Mets. They've got Steve Cohen's unlimited money. They just won back-to-back pennants. They're a championship-caliber organization. But here's what I think is really happening, and one astute observer on social media absolutely nailed it with this take. This smells like leverage. When someone says, "I smell leverage," they mean Tucker's camp is strategically leaking information to create the perception of competition and drive up the price. At this point in time, if Tucker is not getting the money he wants, and he clearly isn't, because if he was getting his asking price, he'd already be the Blue Jays aren't willing to give him $400 million, for example. And if you watched my video yesterday, Bo Bichette is apparently clamoring for $300 million himself, which is absolutely insane. So feel free to check that video out after you've watched this one in its entirety. But there is leverage now being actively used in these negotiations. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Tucker's camp reached out to Jon Heyman and said, "Hey, make it seem like the Mets are really interested in pushing hard. Put some pressure on the Toronto Blue Jays to pay that extra little bit." Especially now with all the Bo Bichette updates coming out. Things are starting to get a little bit tighter in terms of the Blue Jays options. And I think moves are going to start being made very soon. The dominoes are about to fall, folks. Now, at the same time that Heyman was reporting Mets interest, Ken Rosenthal also came out and said something very encouraging for Blue Jays fans. He noted that the Mets can't rely on a short-term, high-average annual value deal if they want a realistic chance at signing Kyle Tucker. Quote, "They aren't always easy to do when the market exists to go longer for those players. And I expect that's the position he's going to be in. And that's exactly the position that the Blue Jays are in, which is really good news for Toronto. The Blue Jays are reportedly willing to go long-term on Tucker, willing to make him a cornerstone piece for the next decade, willing to commit the kind of years and money that turns him into a franchise icon. If the Mets are trying to convince Tucker to take a shorter deal, even at a high annual salary, and Tucker wants long-term security, that works massively in Toronto's favor. So all of this to say, yes, there is pressure building. Yes, there are leverage games being played by agents and rival teams. Yes, we keep hearing similar reports over and over in what feels like we're going in circles like a circus. But things are slowly, despite appearing to spiral out of control, starting to come to a forefront here. We're approaching decision time, and all the signs point toward Toronto. Because here's where everything gets connected, and this is where Bo Bichette enters the picture in a major way. A report dropped yesterday from Ken Rosenthal that has absolutely massive implications for both Tucker and the Blue Jays' entire offseason strategy. Now, I pinned a comment about this in yesterday's video, but let me give you the full context of what's happening. Yesterday, Jon Heyman came out and reported that Bo Bichette is looking for somewhere in the ballpark, and this number is a little bit crazy. Folks, something around $300 million. We don't know the exact term, but let's assume it's over 10 years, which would put him at $30 million per season. That's an absolutely staggering number for a player with Bo's defensive limitations and injury history. But that's apparently what he and his camp are seeking. And now we have concrete information about where Bo might be headed. The Philadelphia Phillies have officially reached a possible inflection point in their offseason. And according to multiple reports, they have scheduled a meeting with Bo Bichette. They've done extensive work on the various roster ripple effects, which would of course require trading Alec Bohm to make room for Bo, but they are expected to meet with Bichette in a video conference call in the coming days. And multiple sources say the club's interest in Bichette is legitimate and serious. If this results in a deal, the Phillies can move on from both JT Realmuto and Alec Bohm, reshuffling their entire infield and catching situation while adding Bo as a centerpiece. And one of the reasons reportedly that the Phillies are such a possible destination for Bo from Bichette's perspective is because Don Mattingly recently went over there after leaving the Blue Jays organization. We know Bo and Don Mattingly had an incredible connection, a really close relationship during their time together in Toronto. That connection is now pulling Bo toward Philadelphia. That's notable because it almost seems like things are starting to pick up on the Phillies front. And if Bo goes to Philadelphia, honestly, that's probably the best case scenario for Blue Jays fans who don't want to see him in the American League East. You can see reports from various sources, including Bill Madden, who's a former radio guy with about 6,000 Twitter followers. Take that with a grain of salt. I'm not saying it's necessarily gospel truth, but he's reporting that his sources are telling him the Phillies right now are the favorite to sign Bo Bichette. The report continues, Don Mattingly, Bo's guy, wants to sign as a bench coach. There's strong mutual interest that could result in a deal when they meet next week. Phillies will then need to move Alec Bohm. And then here's the kicker that connects back to Kyle Tucker. Hopefully this pushes the Blue Jays more to get a deal done with Tucker soon. This is where things are starting to get absolutely crazy. Because people are saying that once Bo signs, Tucker's going to follow shortly after. The dominoes are lined up perfectly. Bo goes to the Phillies. That removes him from the Blue Jays' consideration. Toronto immediately pivots all their attention and resources to Kyle Tucker. And boom, Tucker signs with the Blue Jays within days of Bo going to Philadelphia. And of course it'll sting to lose Bo Bichette after everything he's meant to this organization over the years. If the Blue Jays miss out on Bo and then they also miss out on Tucker, this suddenly turns into a catastrophic offseason. Now, it wouldn't be a complete nightmare offseason because Bo going to the Phillies is infinitely better than him going to the Yankees or Red Sox or any other American League team that Toronto has to face regularly. But at the same time, you absolutely cannot miss on both of these guys. The Blue Jays have to get one of them. Your lineup and your roster. Despite being very good and despite Ross Atkins doing a hell of a job thus far with the Dylan Cease signing, the Shane Bieber addition, the Kazuma Okamoto deal, despite all of that, you cannot be done yet. It's as simple as that. You can't just call it an offseason and move forward without adding another major bat to this lineup. Pressure is starting to mount now, and that's why we're probably starting to see these leverage games being played more aggressively. Tucker's camp is leaking Mets' interest to push Toronto higher. Bo's camp is scheduling meetings with the Phillies and letting that information get out publicly. Everyone is trying to maximize their leverage and get the best possible deal. Or Tucker could actually be genuinely considering the Mets, and this isn't just a leverage play. It's hard to know for certain what's real and what's strategic positioning when you're dealing with negotiations at this level. But what we do know is that the Blue Jays have recently increased their efforts to get Tucker according to multiple reports. They have not increased their efforts reportedly to get Bo back. Probably because Bo Bichette is making his way to Philadelphia for a meeting and there haven't been any reports of the Blue Jays scheduling their own sit-down with him. So it's going to get crazy very quickly. Whether it's the Mets signing a long-term deal with Kyle Tucker, or whether it's Toronto landing him after Bo goes to Philly, things are about to accelerate dramatically. And the fact that Ken Rosenthal is reporting Tucker doesn't want to take a short-term high-average annual value deal, that he wants to go longer with more security. That bodes extremely well for the Blue Jays, who are willing to make that kind of commitment. Let me know down below in the comments what your thoughts are on all of this. Are you confident the Blue Jays land Tucker? Are you devastated that Bo seems headed to Philadelphia? Do you think this is all just leverage games, or is it real interest from all these teams? Now, there are a couple of other things I need to mention quickly that I covered in yesterday's video but are worth reiterating. The Blue Jays avoided arbitration with Dalton Varsho, Ernie Clement, and Tyler Heineman, which is great news for maintaining positive clubhouse chemistry. Varsho got $10.75 million, Clement got $4.6 million, and Heineman got just over $1 million. But something to note now that's a little bit concerning. They didn't settle with Yusei Kikuchi. Tyler Heineman, Ernie Clement, and Dalton Varsho all got their deals done. But Kikuchi is going to head to an arbitration, hearing where they're going to have to come up with a fair number through that adversarial process. This is going to be difficult considering the fact that Kikuchi didn't even play in the majors the year before last. And then he comes back to the big leagues and absolutely dominates with the Toronto Blue Jays in a somewhat weird role bouncing between starting and relief. How do you value a player like that in arbitration? What comparables do you use? It's a tricky situation, and arbitration hearings can sometimes create tension between players and organizations even when both sides are acting in good faith. Hopefully this gets resolved without any lasting hard feelings, but it's worth monitoring as we head toward spring training. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for today's absolutely jam-packed episode. I get it, this is getting out of hand. The same reports keep circulating. The leverage games are exhausting, and we all just want someone to sign somewhere so we can move on with our lives. But I'm going to keep you updated regardless. Every single step of the way, because when that Kyle Tucker signing breaks, you're going to want to know immediately, and I'll be the first one bringing you that news the second it drops. You guys are absolute beasts with your support, and I cannot thank you enough for making this channel what it's become. We're growing faster than ever because you're sharing these videos. You're engaging in the comments. You're hitting that like button and subscribe button. And you're part of this incredible community of Blue Jays fans. So here's what I need from you right now. If you enjoyed this breakdown of all the Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette developments, if you appreciate having all this information compiled and analyzed in one place, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we're posting daily content covering every single angle of this incredible offseason. Turn on notifications so you're alerted the moment the next big development drops. And most importantly, get in the comments and let me know what you think. Do you believe Ken Rosenthal when he says Toronto is the leader for Kyle Tucker? Are you excited that Bo seems headed to the Phillies instead of the Yankees or Red Sox? Do you think all of this, Mets' interest, is just leverage being used by Tucker's camp? Give me your honest thoughts, your bold predictions, your hot takes. Share this video with your fellow Blue Jays fans who need to understand what's happening with Tucker and Bo. Tag them in the comments. Send them the link. Let's get everyone in Blue Jays Nation on the same page about where this offseason is heading. It's the dominoes are lined up. Folks, Bo to the Phillies seems imminent. Tucker to Toronto is looking more and more likely by the day. Ken Rosenthal has confirmed the Blue Jays are the leaders. Industry sources are saying Tucker to Toronto makes the most sense. The leverage games are being played, but the finish line is in sight. This has been an absolutely wild ride of an offseason, and it's about to get even crazier in the coming days and weeks. Okay, stay locked in, stay patient, stay optimistic, because everything is pointing toward the Blue Jays landing Kyle Tucker and building a championship roster that can compete with anyone in baseball. Until next time, Blue Jays Nation, let's keep recruiting Tucker on social media. Let's keep the faith that Ross Atkins closes this deal, and let's get ready to welcome one of the best players in baseball to Toronto. I'll see you in the next video when we hopefully have even bigger news to celebrate. Let's go Blue Jays! Let's go get Kyle Tucker! This is happening! Folks, I can feel it. Cheers.